The fluorescent lights of the corporate office flickered overhead, casting a sterile glow that contrasted sharply with the vibrant colors of the annual company party. Laughter and chatter filled the air, but I felt a knot tightening in my stomach as I stood by my desk, fingers nervously tracing the edge of a polished paperweight. It was a beautiful piece, a gift from my mother who had always encouraged me to aim high. Tonight, however, that encouragement felt more like a burden. I had worked tirelessly to secure my position, and yet the shadow of Karen loomed large, threatening to eclipse my accomplishments. As I scanned the room, I caught sight of her. Karen stood near the buffet, her laughter cutting through the crowd like a knife. She wore a tailored dress that accentuated her every curve, confidence radiating from her as she held court among my colleagues. My heart raced, not from admiration but from a creeping suspicion. I had received a gift from her earlier, an intricately wrapped box that had left me feeling uneasy. What was her game? I pushed the thought aside, willing myself to focus on the moment. "Just enjoy the evening, Emma," I whispered under my breath, but the words felt hollow. Tension crackled in the air as I approached the group. "Emma," Karen's voice rang out, sweet yet laced with something sinister. "You must come join us. We were just talking about the upcoming project. I think you'll find it." Enlightening, her smile was dazzling, but I could see the glint of something darker behind it. My instincts screamed at me to be cautious. I had seen her manipulate others, twisting them into her web of deceit. As I stepped closer, I felt the weight of my own vulnerability. "Thank you, Karen, but I'm fine here," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. I could hear the laughter continuing, but each chuckle sounded more like a taunt directed at me. My pulse quickened as I realized that this was not just a party, it was a battlefield, and I was standing at the front lines. The stakes were higher than I had ever anticipated. I was fighting for my place in a world that thrived on betrayal and ambition, and Karen was determined to make me her next casualty. The night wore on, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Each glance from my peers felt like an interrogation, and I could sense the undercurrents of suspicion swirling around me. I had to establish my role before it slipped away, but how could I do that when Karen was so adept at undermining me? The realization hit me hard. I was not just battling for my job, I was fighting for my dignity in a cutthroat corporate culture that demanded loyalty yet offered none in return. As I turned away from the crowd, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. I couldn't let Karen win. I would find a way to expose her true intentions, even if it meant risking everything I had fought for. The tension in the air was palpable, and I was ready to take my stand. The game was on, and I would not be reduced to a mere pawn in someone else's scheme. I sank into the worn couch of my apartment, the scent of stale coffee lingering in the air, a testament to the long hours I had been putting in. The soft hum of the city outside barely penetrated the walls, yet it felt like a cacophony of chaos within me. My mind raced with the events of the day, spiraling through a labyrinth of frustration and determination. I could still hear the echo of Karen's veiled threats from the team meeting, her words dripping with malice as she smiled sweetly, masking her true intentions. "You know, Emma, sometimes it's better to know your place," she'd said, her tone laced with condescension. I could practically feel the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders as I recalled her icy gaze. It was infuriating to think that someone so manipulative could be so close to the top. My heart raced, not just from anger but from the realization that I had to act. I had worked too hard to let someone like her undermine everything I had achieved. I needed to secure my position, to expose her machinations before they swallowed me whole. "You need to talk to her," Sophie said during our last phone call, her voice a tether to reality. I could picture her concerned expression, the way her eyebrows knitted together when she worried about me. "You can't let her walk all over you, Emma. You have to confront her." I took a deep breath, imagining the confrontation in my mind, rehearsing the words I would say. But what if she twisted my words again? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, and I rubbed my arms as if to ward off the chill of doubt. I needed to be strong, to channel my frustration into something productive. The next morning, I walked into the office with my head held high, determined to confront Karen. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glare on the glossy surfaces of the corporate world. I could hear the chatter of my colleagues, their voices tinged with curiosity as I passed. I caught a glimpse of Karen at her desk, her posture regal, exuding confidence that made my stomach churn. As I approached her, my palms began to sweat, and I wiped them on my tailored trousers, feeling the fabric cling to my skin. I needed to project strength. "Karen, can we talk?" I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. She looked up, feigning surprise, and I could see the flicker of amusement in her eyes. "Of course, Emma, I've been waiting for you to come around." Her words dripped with sarcasm, and I could sense the tension thickening the air between us. This was it, the moment where I would either reclaim my power or fall victim to her schemes. As we stepped into the small conference room, the door clicked shut behind us, sealing us in a world where I had to fight for my place. My heart raced as I prepared to expose her manipulation, the stakes of our confrontation weighing heavily on my mind. This was not just about my job, it was about my dignity, my integrity, and I would not let her take that from me. The lunch meeting was set in a sleek, glass-walled conference room overlooking the city, where the skyline glimmered under the midday sun. I could smell the faint aroma of coffee mixed with a hint of anxiety that hung in the air, thick and almost tangible. As I took my seat, the sharp edges of the table felt cool against my palms, grounding me amid the whirlwind of emotions roiling within. Just moments before, my heart had raced with the thrill of hope. Perhaps today would be the day Karen and I could finally reach an understanding. But deep down, I felt the storm brewing, a sense of impending conflict that I couldn't shake off. As the meeting commenced, I glanced at Karen, who sat across from me, her expression a mask of feigned concern. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped rhythmically against the mahogany table, a subconscious rhythm that belied her true intentions. "I think we need to reconsider our approach, Emma," she said, her voice smooth like silk but laced with undertones of malice. "Your suggestions have left the team feeling uneasy, and we can't afford to lose their trust." Each word felt like a dagger aimed straight at my heart, and I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. I had come here to negotiate peace, yet her words twisted the knife deeper. "Karen, I believe my plan aligns with our goals. We need to cut costs to improve our bottom line, not compromise our mission," I replied, forcing my tone to remain steady despite the quiver in my hands. The tension in the room thickened, a palpable force that seemed to wrap around us like a noose. Karen's lips curled into a cynical smile, and I could see her enjoyment in my discomfort. "But at what cost, Emma? Losing team morale. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's hard to restore. Perhaps you should consider what's best for the group rather than your own ambitions," she shot back, each syllable dripping with contempt. The others around the table shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between us, sensing the brewing storm. A flash of anger surged within me at her blatant manipulation, and I took a breath, attempting to quell the fire igniting in my chest. I had worked too hard to let her undermine my position. "I'm not acting out of ambition, Karen, I'm trying to ensure our future. We can't keep running on empty," I countered, my voice rising slightly, fueled by determination. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air, mixing uneasily with the tension that crackled like static electricity. As the meeting dragged on, I could feel Karen's disdain radiating from her with every passing second. The sharp glances she shot my way were like icy daggers, each one reminding me of the precarious balance I was attempting to maintain. I had hoped for a breakthrough, a moment where we could bury the hatchet, but instead, all I felt was the chasm between us widening. I replayed the last team meeting in my mind, the laughter that used to fill the room now replaced with whispers of doubt about my leadership. Finally, the meeting concluded, but not without Karen's final jab. "I just hope you can handle the consequences of your decisions, Emma. Remember, every choice has its price," she said, her voice smooth but chilling. The way she leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, was a clear signal of her victory. Anger bubbled inside me, a fierce resolve igniting my spirit. I was not going to let her win that easily. As I walked down the office hallway afterward, the reality of the situation settled like lead in my stomach. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to mock me. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I was determined not to show weakness. I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on me, whispers trailing behind me like a fog of suspicion. The thought of being reduced to a mere pawn in Karen's game was unbearable, and I knew I had to fight back. My thoughts raced, strategizing my next move against her deceptive tactics. This was just the beginning. I would not back down. I would reclaim my place and expose the truth, no matter the cost. With renewed determination, I stepped into my office, the door shutting behind me with a definitive thud, sealing away the chaos of the outside world. I was ready to take a stand, to turn the tables on Karen and reveal her true nature. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was prepared to fight for my future. As I settled into the familiar chaos of my apartment, the scent of stale coffee lingered in the air, mingling unpleasantly with the faint trace of burnt toast. The flickering light from my desk lamp cast long shadows across the room, illuminating the scattered papers that chronicled my descent into corporate warfare. I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom, as if each document held the weight of my unraveling life. My pulse quickened as I recalled the recent audit that unearthed evidence of Karen's corruption, evidence that could shatter her carefully curated facade and expose the depths of her betrayal. In that moment my phone buzzed, jolting me from my thoughts. It was Sophie, my best friend, her message a beacon of hope amidst the turmoil. "I found something. You need to meet me at the coffee shop ASAP." My heart raced again, but this time it was not from dread, it was a surge of determination. I slipped on my jacket, feeling the cool fabric against my skin, a reminder that I had to be ready for whatever revelations awaited me. As I navigated the bustling streets, the city pulsed with life around me. The honking cars, the chatter of pedestrians, the aroma of fresh pastries wafting from nearby cafes. But I felt detached, as if I was moving through a dream where reality was just out of reach. Memories flooded my mind of the times I had laughed with Sophie over coffee, planning our futures with unshakable optimism. Now those dreams felt tainted, overshadowed by the chaos that had engulfed my life. I had to confront the truth, and I was terrified of what I might find. Upon entering the coffee shop, the warmth enveloped me, but it did little to chase away the chill in my bones. Sophie was already seated at our usual spot, her eyes darting nervously around the room. The tension in her posture mirrored my own, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope at the sight of her. "Emma, you won't believe what I found," she said, her voice low, as she slid a folder across the table to me. I opened it slowly, my heart pounding in anticipation. Inside were documents that detailed Karen's dealings, contracts with shady companies, transactions that smelled of deceit. Each page I flipped felt like a lifeline thrown into the tumultuous sea of corporate betrayal I was drowning in. "This is it, Sophie, this can bring her down," I whispered, a mixture of excitement and fear bubbling within me, but beneath the exhilaration lay a gnawing fear. What if she found out I was onto her? Sophie leaned in closer, her brows furrowed with concern. "But Emma, this could backfire. Karen won't go down without a fight, you have to be careful." I nodded, the weight of her words settling heavily on my shoulders. I had to be strategic, to navigate the treacherous waters of corporate politics with precision. The stakes were higher than ever, and I couldn't afford to make a misstep. As we left the coffee shop, I felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through me. I had the tools to expose Karen, to reclaim my narrative, yet the shadows of doubt lingered. Could I pull this off without losing everything? I took a deep breath, the crisp air filling my lungs as I steeled myself for the battle ahead. I wouldn't allow my trust to be exploited any longer. This time, I would be the one to dictate the outcome. Back in my apartment, I spread the documents across my desk, each page a testament to Karen's deceit. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, a constant reminder of the pressure I was under. I could feel my heart racing as I began to formulate a plan, each detail a stepping stone toward my revenge. The thought of confronting Karen filled me with a mix of dread and exhilaration. I knew the risks, but the clarity of my purpose sharpened my resolve. I would not be a victim of her schemes any longer. I would rise from the ashes of betrayal and reclaim my place in this ruthless world. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped me as I sat in my favorite corner of the bustling cafe. Its warm, inviting atmosphere a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. I could hear the chatter of patrons mingling with the sound of clinking cups, but my focus was on the small table before me, where I anxiously tapped my fingers against the polished wood. I had invited Karen to meet, hoping to extend an olive branch amidst the chaos that had erupted since the budget cuts. My heart raced as I played out the possible scenarios in my mind. Could this meeting be a turning point? As I waited, I imagined her walking through the door with a smile, ready to discuss how we could move forward together. But deep down, I felt a coil of apprehension tightening in my stomach. Memories of our last confrontation flooded back to me, her cold, cutting words echoed in my mind, reminding me just how far we had fallen. The tension between us crackled like static electricity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was a gamble, one that could either mend the rift or widen it further. When she finally arrived, her entrance was marked by a confident stride, her designer heels clicking sharply against the floor. As she approached, I couldn't help but notice the cool, calculating gleam in her eyes. "Emma, I didn't expect you to reach out," she said, her tone dripping with faux sweetness. I forced a smile, masking my unease. "I think it's important we clear the air, Karen. We're on the same team, after all." "Are we?" she replied, her lips curling into a smirk that sent a chill down my spine. I felt my palms grow clammy as I struggled to maintain my composure. I had hoped for a moment of understanding, but it felt like I was speaking to a wall. "I believe we can find common ground, especially with the recent challenges facing our team," I continued, hoping to steer the conversation toward a more productive path. Karen leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxed, but her eyes narrowed slightly, as if dissecting my every word. "Common ground? You mean your version of common ground, which clearly involves sacrificing my position?" Her voice was low and dangerous, and I could sense the tension radiating from her. The weight of her accusation hung between us, thick and suffocating. I swallowed hard, fighting against the rising tide of frustration. "That's not what I meant, and you know it," I replied, trying to inject a sense of urgency into my words. "We need to work together to restore our team's morale. The financial penalty has affected all of us, and I want to ensure we're aligned moving forward. I hoped my sincerity would cut through the animosity, but Karen's expression remained unreadable. Aligning with you means compromising my own power, and I'm not ready to do that yet, she said, a hint of defiance in her voice. My heart sank as her words resonated with the reality I was trying to avoid. I had hoped to find common ground, but instead I was met with her unyielding ambition. The realization that she was unwilling to cooperate felt like a blow, knocking the wind out of me. I left the cafe feeling defeated, the cool breeze outside contrasting sharply with the heat of disappointment lingering in my chest. I had thought that reaching out could bridge the divide, but instead, it only highlighted the chasm between us. I replayed our conversation in my mind, each word echoing the futility of my efforts. As I walked home, the weight of my frustration grew heavier, a constant reminder that Karen was not someone I could easily sway. Later that evening, Sophie stopped by, sensing my mood as soon as she entered my apartment. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Emma. What happened?" she asked, concern etched across her features. I sighed, leaning against the kitchen counter, the cool granite grounding me. It went worse than I could have imagined. She's not interested in reconciliation, and I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle. Sophie's brow furrowed as I recounted the meeting. "You have to be careful. If she senses your vulnerability, she'll exploit it," she warned, her tone serious. I nodded, frustration bubbling to the surface once more. I had hoped for a moment of clarity, a chance to establish a truce, but Karen's manipulation was a force I hadn't anticipated, and now I was left grappling with the reality that my attempts at peace had failed. In the days that followed, I felt a growing sense of urgency to take action. I couldn't let Karen's sabotage continue unchecked. I needed to regroup and figure out a way to expose her true motives. As I prepared for the next steps, I realized that I had to confront the truth head-on, even if it meant risking everything I had left. As I sat in my apartment that evening, the quiet hum of the city outside barely penetrated my thoughts. The dim light from the lamp cast shadows across the room, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation and dread. I could feel the tension coiling in my stomach like a tightly wound spring, each moment stretching out in front of me as I held the printed audit report in my trembling hands. The paper felt crisp, almost foreign, as if it were the key to unlocking a door I had long been afraid to open. Every word on that page felt like a bombshell, detonating my understanding of the corporate world I had once revered. I remembered the countless hours spent in meetings, the insistent whispers of doubt from my colleagues, and the way Karen had manipulated the narrative to suit her own ambitions. Now here it was, the evidence that could turn the tide in my favor, revealing the corruption that had been festering beneath the surface. My heart raced as I thought about how this information could expose her deceit, but fear clawed at me too. The consequences of acting on this evidence loomed large in my mind. What if Karen retaliated? What if this only made things worse? I glanced at my phone, the screen lighting up with notifications, each one a reminder of the impending confrontation. A message from Sophie flashed across my screen, urging me to meet and discuss our next steps. I hesitated, the weight of my decision pressing down on my shoulders. Did I have the courage to confront Karen with this newfound knowledge? 1,000 scenarios played out in my mind, each one more daunting than the last. Taking a deep breath, I forced my thoughts back to the present. I had to act. I had to be the one to shine a light on the darkness Karen had created. The determination surged within me, pushing aside the shadows of doubt. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, igniting my resolve. This was my moment, the pivotal point where I could reclaim my narrative. I wouldn't allow fear to dictate my actions any longer. With newfound clarity, I began to formulate a plan. I would gather my allies, share the findings, and confront Karen head-on. The thought of standing up against her was both exhilarating and terrifying. I could almost feel the atmosphere in the office shifting, the power dynamics at play ready to be upended. The stakes had never been higher, but I was ready to face whatever came next. This was the beginning of my fight for justice, and I would not back down. As I prepared to meet Sophie, I felt a sense of urgency flood my veins, each step towards that conversation a step toward reclaiming my agency. I was not just reacting anymore, I was ready to take charge, to expose the truth, and to dismantle the web of deception that Karen had spun. The battle lines were drawn, and I was determined to emerge victorious. The sun dipped low outside my apartment window, casting long shadows that danced across the floor as I sat at my desk, the weight of the world pressing heavily on my shoulders. I had finally come to terms with the fact that the time for action had arrived. I could no longer remain a passive observer in the game Karen was playing. My resolve hardened as I began to sketch out a plan, the adrenaline coursing through my veins like fire. The scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air, but it did little to calm the storm within. I flipped open my laptop, the cool metal a comforting contrast to the heat of my determination. I envisioned the details of my strategy forming like a blueprint before me. I had to gather evidence, something concrete that would expose Karen's schemes and dismantle the facade she had built around her. Flashbacks of our previous confrontations flickered through my mind, her smirking eyes, the way she twisted words to her advantage. I could almost hear the echoes of her threats, each one a reminder of what was at stake. My fingers danced across the keyboard as I drafted a list of potential allies. Sophie had already proven her loyalty, and I would need her impulsive nature to help me gather the intel I required. I could see us working together, piecing together the puzzle of Karen's corruption. Each keystroke ignited a spark of excitement, the thrill of the hunt surging through me, but doubt crept in as I realized the risk I was taking. What if I failed? What if my actions only deepened the chasm between me and my colleagues? I shook my head, forcing those thoughts aside. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming my place and restoring balance to my life. I had to remind myself that I was not only fighting for my career, but for the truth. I pulled out a notepad, scribbling down my ideas for a meeting, a gathering where I could present my findings, where I could finally expose Karen's duplicity to the light. My heart raced at the thought of standing in front of my colleagues, their faces a tapestry of shock and disbelief as I unveiled the truth. As the evening waned, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness bubbling inside me like a pot about to boil over. I took a deep breath, my resolve solidifying. This was my moment to take a stand. I would not let fear dictate my actions any longer. I would rise from the ashes of betrayal and reclaim my narrative. The pieces were falling into place, and I was ready to execute my plan, ready to confront the woman who had tried to destroy me. This was not just a battle, it was a war for my future, and I was prepared to fight it, no matter the cost. The corporate boardroom felt like a battlefield, each polished surface reflecting the tension that crackled in the air. I stood at the head of the long table, my palms clammy against the cool wood, the scent of expensive cologne mingling with the faint aroma of stale coffee. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, illuminating the anxious faces of my colleagues, each pair of eyes veiled with skepticism and anticipation. I could feel their collective breath held, a moment suspended in time, as I prepared to execute the plan that had consumed my every thought since the scandal broke. With a deep breath, I glanced at the stack of documents in front of me, evidence of Karen's corruption meticulously gathered by Sophie and me. My heart raced, a drumbeat of determination echoing in my chest as I recalled the countless late nights spent piecing together the puzzle of deceit. The stakes were high, revealing this truth meant risking everything I had fought for, but I could no longer remain silent. Thank you all for coming today. I know there's been a lot of unrest in our company lately, and I want to address it head-on, I began, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. A murmur rippled through the room, the tension palpable. I could see Karen leaning back in her chair, her expression a mix of disdain and confidence, as if she believed I was about to crumble under the pressure. But this time I would not be reduced to a punchline. What I'm about to share is crucial for the future of our company, I continued, my pulse quickening as I placed the documents on the table, letting the weight of their significance hang in the air. This is evidence of unethical practices that have been undermining our integrity and jeopardizing our clients' trust. I paused, allowing my words to sink in, watching as curiosity replaced skepticism on some of their faces. As I laid out the details, I could feel the atmosphere shift. Names, dates, figures, all evidence of Karen's manipulation flowed from my lips like a confession. With each revelation, I could see disbelief morphing into realization, the tension in the room tightening like a noose. Karen's eyes narrowed, her facade cracking as she realized the extent of my knowledge. "You're making a grave mistake, Emma," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You don't know what you're getting into." Her threat hung in the air, but I refused to be intimidated. "No, Karen, the mistake was yours. I trusted you and you betrayed me, and this company," I shot back, my voice unwavering, fueled by the anger and betrayal I had endured. I could feel my heart pounding, a thunderous reminder of the fight I had chosen. The room erupted into chaos as my colleagues reacted to the revelations. Some gasped, others exchanged stunned glances, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the truth began to take hold. I had finally taken a stand, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. As the dust settled, I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of my colleagues, many of whom had once stood beside me. "We have the power to rebuild our company's reputation and our trust in each other. Let's move forward together with integrity at the forefront of our mission," I declared, my voice rising above the murmurs, my resolve unwavering. I could see glimmers of understanding in their expressions, the walls I had erected beginning to crumble. The confrontation had shifted the tide, and as I breathed in deeply, the weight of my actions began to lift. This was just the beginning, but I felt a new sense of purpose emerging from the ashes of betrayal. The evening air was thick with the scents of fresh blooms from the nearby park, wafting through my open window as I sat in my apartment, enveloped in a cocoon of silence. The aftermath of the confrontation lingered in my mind like a bittersweet melody, echoing the words I had spoken, the promises I had made to my team. I could still feel the weight of their gazes upon me, a mixture of skepticism and tentative hope that had settled like a fragile truce. As I leaned back against the worn fabric of my couch, my fingers absent-mindedly traced the outline of my phone, the device buzzing intermittently with messages from colleagues. Each notification sent a jolt of anxiety through me, a reminder of the precarious balance I now had to maintain. I recalled the tension in the boardroom, the way the air had crackled with unspoken doubts. Had I truly convinced them, or was it simply a momentary reprieve? I glanced at the clock, its ticking a rhythmic reminder of time passing, and memories of my earlier confrontations flooded back. The image of Lisa's disappointed face haunted me, a stark contrast to the camaraderie we once shared. I sighed, wondering if I could ever bridge the chasm my decisions had created. The uncertainty gnawed at me, yet beneath the fear, a flicker of determination ignited. I had to prove myself not just to them but to myself. The following day, as I entered the office, the atmosphere felt different, charged with a new energy. Whispers of my proposed open forum circulated among the staff, and I could see glimmers of curiosity in their eyes. I took a deep breath, the familiar scent of coffee mingling with the crispness of the morning air, a small comfort as I prepared for the day ahead. I was ready to face whatever came next, to rebuild the trust I had shattered. At the company event later that week, the mood shifted palpably as colleagues approached me, their expressions softer than before. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as they engaged in conversations, their voices a blend of optimism and cautious excitement. As I mingled, I caught sight of Lisa across the room, her smile tentative but genuine. My heart swelled with hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of healing, a chance to reconnect and rebuild what had been lost. As the night wore on, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. The journey was far from over, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, to lead with empathy and integrity. This was my chance to rewrite the narrative, to transform betrayal into a story of redemption and resilience. I would not let my past define me. Instead, I would use it as a stepping stone toward a brighter future. As I sat in the soft glow of my apartment, the remnants of the storm I had weathered swirled in my mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. The air was tinged with the scent of fresh coffee, a comforting reminder of the new beginnings I had fought so hard to achieve. I reflected on the journey I had taken, the battles I had fought, and the friendships I had nearly lost. The walls of my home felt like a sanctuary, a stark contrast to the corporate battlefield I had left behind. I could hear the distant hum of the city, a reminder that life continued to pulse outside my window, vibrant and full of potential. It was time to harness this energy, to transform my experience into something greater. I envisioned starting a YouTube channel, sharing my story of betrayal, redemption, and the lessons I had learned along the way. I wanted to inspire others who found themselves in similar situations, to offer them hope and guidance. The thought sent a thrill of anticipation through me, igniting a spark that had long been dormant. I began to sketch out ideas, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I drafted potential topics and themes. But beneath the excitement, a flicker of doubt crept in. What if I wasn't enough? What if my story didn't resonate? I pushed those thoughts aside, reminding myself of the strength I had discovered within. I had faced my fears, stood up to betrayal, and emerged stronger. I owed it to myself and to others to share this journey. With a deep breath, I finally felt ready to take that leap. As I hit publish on my first video, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. I was no longer just Emma, the corporate executive. I was Emma, the storyteller, the guide. I could feel the weight of my insecurities lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose. This was my moment to shine, to connect with others and build a community. I closed my eyes for a second, visualizing the faces of those who would watch and hopefully find solace in my words. So here I am, inviting you to join me on this journey. Let's explore the complexities of ambition, the power of resilience, and the importance of community together. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell.